Williams. But Michael.
Good morning. No, it's afternoon. Good afternoon. I can't even read. My name is Michael Swords. I am today's service associate. Sharon Thompson-Williams will do the reading, and Reverend Matt Alspaugh will be bringing the message this afternoon. Our opening words this afternoon are by Julian Jamaica Soto. To the people who have mistaken freedom for liberation, To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology. Even if they try to take it from you, you must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to actually be free, you must know that you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise. And so I just want to welcome you to our Sunday service here at LCUUF. May you discover the truths that resonate with your spirit here. Our announcements were on a slideshow before the service and were also sent out with the weekly newsletter. If you are new and would like to receive the newsletter and other emails, please talk to a member of the welcome team or write to us at info@lcuuf.org. And now, a special welcome to our visitors. If you are visiting with us for the first time, or have returned or reconnected with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name, tell us where you're from. If you are on Zoom, please introduce yourself on the chat box and it will be read aloud in the fellowship. So let's start with the people in the room. New people or returning people? There we go.
Hello, I'm Jose. I'm visiting from Tennessee in the United States. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Diana Clark, and I live in Chapala.
Hi, I'm Ronnie. Just moved here about a month ago from San Francisco.
Welcome.
Okay. Buenos dias. I'm Dave Windall from Tucson, Arizona.
I'm Jill Windall from Tucson.
Welcome.
I'm Elizabeth. We live in San Antonio, and I'm here very occasionally, so you don't recognize me.
I'm George Treadwell. I live in San Antonio.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Alan Nickel. We're visiting from San Diego. We're here for 2 months.
And I'm Janet Nichol from San Diego.
Do we have any visitors on Zoom this morning?
No, it does not look like. No visitors on Zoom this morning.
Okay. Well, welcome to all our visitors and newcomers, both in person and nobody on Zoom. Here at LCUUF, we offer a wide variety of services on a variety of various topics, presented by our members, outside guests, as well as our minister, Matt Alspaugh. We hope you will return to sample this variety of thought and belief. So our opening hymn is number 360. Here we have gathered. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing. Our chalice lighting words today are by Tara Humphreys. Whether you are from the South, the East, the North, or the West, whether you were born into this faith, found it, or it found you, whether you feel at home or are still trying to find your place, whether you believe in God, are open to mystery, or still have no idea, whether you are unemployed, underemployed, cobbling things together, overworking, or in school, whether you are holding anxiety, grief, confusion, anger, and hope, restlessness, or deep peace, Unitarian Universalism has a place for you. It is right here. And this chalice is lit for you. Now, having lit our chalice, let us sing these words together.
Rekindle this light and celebration for the life that we share.
Each moment is a miracle, encompassing everything, the joy and the sorrow, the failure and the success, the disappointment and happiness, the celebration and grief. This is the time in our service when we can briefly share our joys, our sorrows, and our milestones. We will start with the folks in the room to give those on Zoom a chance to type in their requests. So anyone here we start with the sorrows. Let's start with the sorrows. There. First, let us voice our sorrows, whatever you or the world may be holding that is in need of our healing and caring thoughts. Are there any sorrows that people would like to share here in the room?
I'm Dee Dee, and I hope that the Democratic Party gets its act together very soon so that we can defeat an autocratic government.
Amen. Anyone else in the room?
Yes, my friend Harry, who has been a good friend and a mentor, was diagnosed with cancer recently. So prayers and positive energy for him, please.
Stand up.
You can stand up.
Let go. Thank you. As a Unitarian Universalist for 60 years, I hope that we can be open to our various differences politically and not bring them so adamantly into a worship service. We all have our own opinions, and although I might agree with you, I still feel that we are here as a free interchange of ideas, thoughts, and feelings. And it's a sorrow when that doesn't happen.
Amen. Thank you.
So,
in response to what Dee Dee said and what Don said, I don't know whether this is a sorrow or a joy, but I think it's an important thing to say that Biden has just withdrawn. And that President Biden has just withdrawn from the campaign. So I think it's important to send him our thoughts and our prayers and to send everyone else who is going to struggle through this time thoughts and prayers.
Okay. Do we have any sorrows on Zoom?
Yes, we do. From Trudy to everyone, I have a joy tinged with sadness. I am happy that President Biden has decided to leave the campaign. He deserves to rest on his laurels. My sadness is my disappointment in our press, especially the New York Times, for not giving him a chance to exit with more grace. And from Colleen Beery, now that Biden has pulled out, what will happen with the U.S. election for president? Big concern for our country and the world.
Amen. Now let us share our joys. Wait a minute, we got one. Is that a joy? Okay. Whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others. Are there any joys?
My name is Kathy, and I want to say that I am, excuse me, so grateful and happy that my sister Helen has come back to be with me from Austin, Texas, and I'm really, really pleased about it. Thank you, Helen. And also thank you to Dee Dee and, I don't know your name, sorry, Don, and Ted for being able to express feelings and that this is a place where people can do it. And Ted, thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Flo, and my joys are always seem to be bittersweet. You know, there's such a mixture of emotions that I feel. I'm so grateful to be here, and grateful that many of my friends are on the road to recovery with their physical ailments and issues. And as far as I can see, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I really feel that sincerely, and I would love to pass that on to the world that I touch. So.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim. Just got back from a 7-week sojourn in California. Some of that time was up in Lake Tahoe, serving as a minister at a congregation, very fulfilling. And then with my granddaughter in Oakland, 3.5 years old, I was her child care giver. And a sheer delight to be around this little energy. And I wouldn't have shared this, but just listening to what's gone on here in the last few minutes and carrying that pathos that we all experience, but just to have a place like this where we can do that is pretty extraordinary. And I'm grateful for that, grateful to be here with you this morning.
Very good. Very good.
Good morning, I'm Heidi. And on all these heavy notes that we've just shared, some of it good, some of it not so good, I'm offering a bit of lightness here. I want to welcome you to read Liz Hill's recent book. It is a delightful book that we can all learn from, grow from, and it is a joy to be able to share this on top of all this other stuff that's going on. Congratulations, Liz. You did a great job. I was here yesterday, I learned. Lighthearted. When I was out this morning in the garden, weeding and listening to the San Miguel de Allende UU church service, I saw on my milkweed 2 monarch butterflies, and they were just so beautiful. I get butterflies and bumblebees and June bugs and hummingbirds, but the monarchs are here. You know, the Canada to the San Rosario in Michoacan, monarchs are here. Life goes on. Nature's good.
Go ahead.
I just want to share a joy about a couple of my favorite people, Deb and Chris Gang, my favorite gang, and gang leaders, and they have just witnessed the wedding of their son Stephen to his love, and it sounds like a wonderful occasion.
My name's Tom. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned a concern about a cancer extraction on my nose. At that time, I was prepared to lose about half of my nose, and my gratefulness today is that I have all of my nose. It's stitched together in a bit like Frankenstein, but I think it is going to hold its place. And I was a business owner for 10 years in Mexico, so I have the ability to be part of the EAMS program. And for those of you that may be under EAMS care, don't be afraid. Follow the bureaucracy. Do what you're told. Everything will be fine. So thank you to the EAMS program for caring for me.
Are there any joys that were shared on Zoom this morning?
Yes, we have one joy from Colleen. To have my dear friend Lisa here with me in Austin for 10 days. Grateful to have so many loving companions with me during my treatment.
Very good. One more in the room. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, we're very lucky because we're heading to New Hampshire on Wednesday, and we're going to visit with Devorah.
Nice.
Great. Say hello. And this candle from our care team represents the joys and sorrows we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken sorrows and joys. Let us share a moment of silence to hold in our heart both the joys and sorrows that have been shared this morning. There are many ways to be of service to LCUUF. Our time, our treasure, and talents are all necessary components to a healthy fellowship. Now is the time in our service when we ask you to share the gift of treasure through pledging and donations. As we pass the baskets, if you are new here today or you have been struggling to hold things together, let the basket pass. Your presence is more than enough and is a gift to us. Each week we give half of the money collected at the service to an organization providing services to our lakeside community. For the month of July, we are supporting Tapehua Central Comunitario. The Tapehua is one of the poorest neighborhoods in the state of Jalisco. Tapehua Central Comunitario works to help a village to help itself. To create a place the poor of the village can go for food, counseling, education, guidance, and help of any kind. If you are not attending the fellowship in person, please donate to share the basket when you pay your pledge. Donate to share the basket separately or indicate what part of your donation is for share the basket. The offering has now been generously given and gratefully received.
Good morning, afternoon. I'm still working on it. So I want to invite you into a brief time of meditation. And in many forms of meditation, we oftentimes focus on our concentration. We focus on some object of meditation that allows us to try to rein in sort of the monkey mind that runs around in our head, so all those voices, and bring them into a place of relative calm through the practice. So today I want to offer a meditation using the object of meditation of the ancient elements, the traditional elements, earth, air, fire, water. I want to see if I too can adjust this and make it sound a little better. That might help. So I invite you to just settle into your chair, perhaps close your eyes or just soften them if that would be your preference. And we might start by meditating on the earth. Actually just simply feeling the earth, feeling our contact with our chairs or whatever we're sitting on, laying on, feeling perhaps the contact of the earth with our feet, having a sense of the earth's desire for us, the fact that the earth is pulling us down and we are pulling the earth up to a sort of love connection there, perhaps. Just meditating on that physical connection. And now we might move on to air, specifically our breath, noticing the air flowing in and flowing out, in and out. We might also notice the air movement across our skin, just being in touch with this air that connects all of us. Breathing. And now we might move on to fire, feeling the warmth within us, perhaps. Or you might, if you like, look at candles, the flames that we have up here. Focus on those. Or just continue to feel the warm parts of your body. And now water. Water, we might get in touch with the saliva in our mouths, feeling that moisture there. Or perhaps the liquid flowing through our veins, our blood circulating through our body. Perhaps you can feel your pulse. Earth, air, fire, water. 4 very traditional elements, objects of meditation that you can use in your own practice. May it be so. Welcome back. Let me see, I'm supposed to do an introduction here. So Sharon Thompson Wilson, a member of this congregation, has been a marriage and family therapist for more than 40 years. I asked her to read today because of her experience and knowledge of today's topic, particularly her grounding in systems theory and her work with parts and IFS. And we'll get to what all those mean in a moment. Sharon?
It was so much easier to do this yesterday when there were 3 people in the room. Today's reading are excerpts from the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz is a psychotherapist, researcher, and creator of internal family systems model of therapy. He suggests in this excerpt that we were all raised in what I'll call, he's calling it that, this is his excerpt, what I'll call the monomind belief system. The idea that you have one mind, out of which different thoughts and emotions and impulses and urges emanate. Because the monomind view is so ubiquitous and assumed in our culture, we've never really questioned the truth of it. Schwartz says, I want to help you take a second look at who you really are. He's going to he invites us to look and try on a different paradigm of multiplicity that internal family systems, IFS, espouses, and consider the possibility that you and everyone next to you and everyone else is a multiple personality. And that's a good thing.
So a few years ago, my wife Liz and I drove to Asheville, North Carolina to see a psychotherapist to help us deal with an issue in our relationship. Now, lest you wonder, Liz is okay with me sharing this little detail of our lives. So we drove to this house deep in the woods where this therapist had his office. Now, this particular therapist introduced us to this technique called internal family systems, or IFS. He invited us into an exploration of our parts, that is to say, elements of our personalities. And this is the therapeutic technique that I want to speak about a bit today. So first, let me show a brief video by this Dr. Richard Schwartz, who developed IFS and whom Sharon trained with. I'm going to mention that. He developed IFS, in which he introduced this concept of internal family systems. And so here's the video.
IFS, we think people have parts, and parts are subpersonalities, and in distinction from a lot of other systems, we believe that we're born with them. It's the nature of the mind to be subdivided, that we're all actually multiple personalities, that people who carry that diagnosis aren't any different from anybody in here, except that theirs got blown apart more by the horrific trauma they suffered. But what are called alters in that field are really what we call parts. We call them parts because it's the most user-friendly word. It's not the best word in the sense of being descriptive, but most people don't object when they talk about their problems and you say, oh, one part of you says this, another part says that. So everybody's got parts, and they're all good. They all have naturally valuable talents and resources to lend to us. But as we go through life and encounter traumas and attachment injuries, they shift from their naturally valuable states into roles that sometimes can be quite destructive to us, not realizing that they were roles that were necessary often when you were in the middle of a trauma or had a toxic parent, but they get frozen in that time, and so they think that they still have to do this for you, and often don't even know how old you are. Often, if you were to ask some of these, what we call protector parts, they would think you're still 6 years old, and that therefore they still need to do this for you. So good parts forced into extreme and sometimes damaging roles, hating the roles, would love to get out of these roles.
Me, back to me. So maybe Walt Whitman, who we just popped up on the screen, when he said, do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. Maybe he was right about that, at least in the IFS perspective. So let me summarize the idea of internal family systems. It assumes that within each of our minds, we have these discrete sub-personalities or parts. And it sees these parts as relating to each other and with ourself, that is the self, kind of capital S self, as we live in the world. So in a way, these parts and the self interact like members of a family. And that's where this form of family got its name. You see, family systems is a form of therapy for working with families, and internal family systems is consequently a therapy for working with that family inside your head. Now, much of the time, it's not a problem when we have all these parts interacting in our minds. But as Schwartz said, it's when we encounter traumatic situations in life that things can get out of whack, that parts can do things that are counterproductive or even destructive. So what do we do with these bad parts? How do we control them? Well, in his early work as a family therapist, Schwartz encountered many clients with severe eating disorders. And some of these clients described different personalities or parts inside of them. And the clients told him that these parts had power over them and made the client do things. Plus, these parts were often seemingly in conflict. For example, one of them would encourage the person to binge eat, and another would be shaming the person for having done that eating. So Schwartz described meeting one client in particular, a young woman who had been sexually abused as a child, and she had been cutting her wrists. She described how a certain part in her mind made her do this. And Schwartz talked to that part, arguing, badgering that part until the part finally agreed not to cut her wrists anymore. But at the next session, the young woman showed up with a gash across her face. The frustrated Schwartz said, "I can't beat you at this." And the part responded, "I don't really want to beat you." Schwartz shifted from trying to control the part to simply being curious and asked, "Why did you do this to her?" And the part said, "It just wanted to keep her safe." Really? Schwartz thought. The part told Schwartz that it was trying to get the client out of her body when she was being abused, of essentially trying to protect her from that. But the abuse, that was way in the past, when the client was a little child. So Schwartz began to realize that that might be the case with some of the other parts, with many of the other clients, that the parts were forced to take on these roles that were useful back then but are no longer useful now, and in fact were destructive. Furthermore, these parts oftentimes ended up, in a way, exiled, shamed and pushed away by other parts, which caused them to act out in destructive ways. So let me consider a more common example, and I think Sharon for this example, like procrastination, maybe something that more of us might be in touch with. So let's say you struggle with getting things done on time. If you ask your procrastinating part with curiosity how it's trying to be helpful, it might say something like, "Well, I don't want you to do an imperfect job or to fail." So you might go further with that part and ask that part, well, what if I do an imperfect job? And then going deeper, you might ask the part, do you remember a time when you came to protect me as I was suffering from the pain of imperfection? Was I humiliated? Did people shame me? Was I told I was lazy? And so in a continued conversation with this part, you might learn that this part began to use procrastination as a way to protect another more exiled part, the one that felt strong emotions, felt deep inside about failing, shame, about disaster. And so that's the model. And what I want to highlight here is that there are kind of paradigm shifts in the way what Schwartz is proposing here. Paradigm shifts from previous ways of approaching therapy. So first he was suggesting that our mind might not be unitary, that all of us might have multiple parts in our minds. And I mean, isn't that true in a way? I mean, don't we oftentimes talk of having a mind to do something or realizing that a part of me is not in agreement, things like that? Maybe having multiple parts is normal, not pathological. The second thing is that he began to realize that all of these parts were valuable, fundamentally good, working, trying to keep the client safe. He says there are no bad parts. But if a client had experienced serious trauma, such as childhood abuse, well, these parts oftentimes got stuck in the past, forced into extreme roles, and they try to help out, often in unhelpful ways. So what Schwartz suggests is that psychological trauma, particularly childhood trauma, can distort the relationship between the parts. Some parts end up carrying the pain and the fear from that trauma, and these parts are effectively exiled, pushed away, so that we don't have to recall the trauma. Is that making sense? And who does the pushing away? Well, it's other parts that take on protective roles. But sometimes these parts overreact, and they lead to impulsive or irrational behavior, things like substance abuse, perhaps, or even violence. So the challenge is that you don't want to, that what you want to do is to disentangle the parts, and you want to ultimately invite those exiled parts back in. And by you, I mean yourself, the core personality that you have. You might help these parts unburden themselves from the trauma that they are carrying. And so you acknowledge and honor what they were trying to do, these parts, and help them realize that what they were doing might have made sense in the distant past, but it's not helpful now. And you welcome them back in. So what happens as we get these various parts to, well, some of them to step aside so that we can get these other parts to unburden themselves and welcome them back in and get free, what happens is that the self is fully revealed. And what Schwartz and others have observed is that his clients become calmer, more curious, confident, that they have greater clarity about what's going on in their mind, and they're able to connect with their parts with compassion. And they're able to help those parts with courage and creativity. These are the 8 C's that are the qualities of the self. And so I have another example here. Karen Faith, who, like, we have a TED Talk here, she worked as a marketing focus group facilitator for many years and also a market researcher. And she came to see that she too had multiple parts. In this, she calls them selves. I don't think she quite uses an IFS approach, but it's very, very similar. And she needed to ultimately welcome those parts, those selves, back in. So here's a clip from a much longer TED Talk.
the last 20 years, I've shadowed people in their homes, at their jobs, while they shop and drive and go on dates. I ask them to be honest and vulnerable with me. And to do this, I practice something that I call unconditional welcome, which is like a researcher's neutrality, but a little extra. The day I discovered it, I was sitting in the living room of a research subject. She was a very unpleasant woman, if I'm honest, feeding French fries to an infant as she snapped at me that she would never have her children vaccinated, not even to protect them from polio, because she didn't know what was in those shots. Now, never mind that she said this an inch of ash deep into a Virginia Slim, right? I was judging her. I know. I'm not proud of it, but at least one of me is a jerk. I needed to connect with her, and I didn't want to. I didn't like her. I didn't respect her. I didn't want to spend a single moment with her, and the project required that I spend hours, and that I use that time to get to know her, what she values, what she believes, where she finds strength. Researcher neutrality was unavailable to me at the time, so I had to get out the big guns. I called up my New Age visualization skills, and I took a deep breath, secondhand smoke and all, and I imagined that my breath was inflating a shiny soap bubble filled with unconditional welcome. Not tolerance, not even compassion, total welcome, as is, no comments, no notes. And as I inflated the bubble, it became big enough to contain my whole body, and then hers. And in that moment, I saw a mother feeding her baby in a world that she didn't trust. I told her that I could see that she cared about protecting her son, and I asked her if she got that from her parents. And then we had a conversation, and I learned about her. I learned why she was afraid and angry, and how she fought through that fear to make a family. When I welcomed this woman unconditionally, I saw her more clearly, but I also loved her instantly. We have been told too often that love is hard. It's not. Love is what happens when we stop trying to figure out who deserves it. It's right there, when we stop trying to figure out who deserves it, and we welcome someone, anyone, exactly as they are in the moment. It will be 2 more years before I learned to do this with all the parts of myself. But it started just as simply. A part of me had become very chatty, a part that was afraid and angry, whiny, demanding, unreasonable, and relentless. She told me that we were never going to get better, and she wanted out of here. I asked her what I could do. She only told me she wanted to die, over and over and over and over. I begged her to shut up, and she did not. Finally, after weeks of harassment, whether out of exhaustion or epiphany, instead of shouting back, I took a deep breath. I became my own moderator. I said out loud, in a voice that surprised me, "Thank you for sharing. I'm going to remind you of our agreement to be honest and reasonable." And she answered me, that voice. Now, don't get spooked. This is all just thinking happening. But the part of me asking and the part answering did in fact seem like different parts. She told me that she was in a lot of pain, and I told her, I know. And I promise you I'm going to take care of you, but I need you to get on board. I will listen to you, but I will not obey you. And as clearly as I'm speaking to you now, she said, okay. And then we started to talk. As I continued the dialogue with myself, I found more of me, more voices with more points of view, some of them more fun than others. And the imagined landscape of my mind began to look a lot like a focus group. This round table of wildly mixed characters and one moderator keeping some kind of order with honesty, boundaries, kindness, and most importantly, gratitude. I thank myself for their contributions, no matter how bonkers or twisted they may seem, because we're all me. I think of my fragmented self less like a broken mirror and more like a prism. We're a full spectrum. Today, there isn't a voice in my head that I don't welcome, and while some of us are occasionally unreasonable, we're not mean. Even my whiny, shamey voice is trying to help in her weird way. But when I ask her to be clear and kind, she tells me exactly what I need to know, what she needs to feel better, and what she'd like for me to learn. But just like the scared and angry mother, she only does this when I accept her exactly as she is in the moment. So while my openings for self-talk and focus groups sound almost identical, the closings are a little different. At the round table, I would hand out parking validation and remind everyone to sign for their cash. But when I'm with all of me, I say, I love you. Thank you for helping me see what you see.
I love you, and thank you for helping me see what I see. There's more. This is a great video, and I recommend you view the whole thing. You'll find it just by searching for Karen Faith TEDx. And you also might check out her other video, which you'll find if you do that same search, Original Coke Jesus. Now, while I don't believe that Faith used the IFS model to relate to her parts, she did come to an important realization, which matches what Schwartz saw, and that is this, that these parts, all of them are trying to help. There are no bad parts. All of us, parts included, are inherently good. We are inherently worthy. And I cannot overemphasize this conclusion. In the mental health world, for so long the focus has been on pathology, on illness. And it's little wonder that, at least for most of my life, seeing a therapist or a counselor was looked at as something shameful, something that you kept secret from everyone. And yet, I have somehow come to realize that a little therapy now and then is a good thing. It was a gift of life and health for myself. It was likely that without therapy, my wife and I would have never married. And it is likely that without therapy along the way, we would have divorced. In my work with couples, often to officiate weddings, I sometimes suggest that they might consider therapy at some point. And I tell them a little bit of my own story in an attempt to normalize this idea. But I can often tell when couples aren't going to make it. They are the ones that will have nothing to do with receiving counsel. I'm getting a nod over here. And so I'm delighted to see that in the past few years, really it seems like since the pandemic mostly, there's been a culture change around mental health and therapy. First, that many ways of being in the world that were once labeled pathological are now just seen as different, as neurodivergent. And secondly, that many forms of therapy like IFS have moved towards being welcoming, loving, positive spaces, encouraging good, rather than suppressing what was labeled as bad. And so finally, this idea of being in therapy is coming to be celebrated, not stigmatized. People are now comfortable about talking about the fact about their mental health, and it's no secret. So what might you do with this in your own life if you want to explore internal family systems at greater depth? Well, in talking with Sharon, I have some suggestions. You might simply start with the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, which Sharon read from earlier. And associated with that book is a workbook called simply Workbook, No Bad Parts, for those of you that want a more hands-on kind of approach. And also, I might recommend the IFS Institute website as a place to find more resources, including locating therapists and practitioners. And finally, with all this exploration of internal family systems, it has caused me to wonder, could this be a metaphor for society? In particular, I think of the political scene in the USA, which certainly appears to be traumatic and pathological right now. Could there be metaphorical parts at play? I mean, I think of rural and urban, of Democratic and Republican, of racist and woke. Some of these parts seem to be in exile, and some of them seem to be carrying burdens from past traumas. Some parts seem to be silencing others, or at least trying to, and it's all leading to this impulsive and harmful behavior, perhaps threatening the culture itself. Can that country find a way to listen to all its parts, metaphorically, freeing some of them from their historic burdens? Can we find a way for the cultural self to emerge? No, this is not some false uniformity of belief, some national mono-mind that some self-named patriots speak of, but rather, can the country honor and celebrate the variety of cultural parts that it contains? And so at the end of that therapy session in Asheville so many years ago, the therapist turned to us and said, "I'm happy to see you again if you want to return, but really you've got this. You'll work through it." It was an affirmation of the work that Liz and I had done in the years before, and maybe a recognition of what he saw in the selves that we had brought to his office that day. In his book, Schwartz notes that IFS has morphed over time from being exclusively about psychotherapy to becoming kind of a spiritual practice. And as a spiritual practice, this is my words, it seems to align well with the values of Unitarian Universalism. That all of our parts, like all of the people around us, are inherently good, even if they don't seem so on the surface. That we need to welcome our parts with curiosity and compassion, just as we welcome those around us. And that love is at the center. And coming to love our parts, it's like loving everything, caring for the people around us and for this earth. May it be so.
Closing hymn, it's not working. There we go. Our closing hymn is "We Laugh, We Cry." Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing.
We
I don't know if my mind is really made up of parts. It does seem so at times. But I do know this. Of my parts, I want everyone heard, everyone included, everyone welcomed in as inherently good. Isn't that what we all want in ourselves and our communities? Let us continue our work to become whole people, to create whole communities, and to nurture a world that is whole. Blessed be.
Let us extinguish our chalice with these words, which we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace and with a purpose.